I was on a plane with Sachin and Yuvraj and the Indian Legends team. Sachin literally has to come through a different way to the airport.
He's got just a sea of fans outside of his front door, basically 24/7. You have to be pretty famous in London to get anywhere near that kind of attention. When the sun comes out in London, you've got Wimbledon on, you've got the Test series, England versus India, you've got almost every celebrity around the world.
Yeah, I've been asked in a particular development, have any other Indians bought in this development? It kind of rubber stamps it if people in their own community are also buying property here. We get asked, don't we, who else has bought? It is a little bit of a status symbol. Hi, I'm Ollie, MD at Source Investments. Today I'm joined by my business partner and founder at Source Investments, Tom Jewell, and our other business partner, Chris Tremlett. Today we want to chat about why the UK property market is so attractive to overseas investors, but with a specific focus on Indian buyers. And Chris, you're a really good person to chat to about this. You spent a lot of time in India through your playing career in cricket. So it'd be good to perhaps get your take, because you still chat to a lot of people based in India who are looking at purchasing property in the UK, some of those prime areas in London. So it'd be good, just to understand, I think, why you think Indian buyers are so attracted by the UK property market.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a lot of time in India with cricket. Obviously, I've been there a couple of times with you guys. As you've seen, it's a very hectic place. The difference between the rich and the poor is obviously very different. And when you are at the higher end of the spectrum on the wealth scale, especially some of the sports guys, the actors with the profiles that they have, it can be a tough place to be. Everyone knows who you are. You can't go anywhere. Even myself going there firsthand as an ex England cricketer, I still get a lot of attention. It's hard to go anywhere, so I can't really imagine what it's like for a Bollywood star or an Indian cricketer. There is no sort of privacy at all, really. So it's chaos, it's carnage. And coming to the UK, for example, obviously there's a lot of ties with Indians and England, the history, the cultural sort of similarities here as well, even though there's cultural differences. I know that a lot of Indians feel very comfortable coming to the UK. Especially cricketers, obviously with the history. It's sort of documented that, the likes of Sachin Tendulkar, he's had, I think, a place here for 10, 15 years. Speculation that Virat Kohli has just moved here or spending a lot of time here. And firsthand, myself talking to Indian cricketers that want to potentially have a holiday home here or long-term move to the UK because they can sort of have a more peaceful life where they don't get recognised. They can walk down the high streets in London and not have chaos. Basically, I think it's an attractive place for the sportsmen to come, the actors to come, even high-profile businessmen, attention in their own right for being wealthy. I think the UK is a safe spot for them to come and park their money in. With the history of London and they know what they're sort of buying into, I think it's a very attractive prospect for those guys.
I think, Chris, you've got some great first-hand look at what it's like to be a celebrity in India. I think you were recently on a private jet sat next to Sachin Tendulkar and Yuvraj Singh. What's it like for those guys? You mentioned it, living in India. They both got, Yuvraj Singh, I believe now, has also got a property in the UK. What's it like for those guys living in India day to day? I mean, I saw a social post this week of Rohit Sharma driving out with his Lamborghini outside of his apartment block and just driving out of the front of his house just to pop wherever he's going. He's got just a sea of fans outside of his front door, basically 24/7. You have to be pretty famous in London to get anywhere near that kind of attention.
Yeah, it's just not the same, because it's not quite as fanatic here, I guess, is it, versus India, where cricket is like blood. It's people are so fanatic about it. You don't get the same in the UK. So like you say, they probably, well, there's a few things. There's obviously that bit more peaceful, quieter life in some respects. But I do think everyone that we speak to, UK market, particularly for these guys with decent budgets, London in particular, central London is always kind of put on a pedestal, and it's a little bit of it's a trophy asset, but it's a bit of a status thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're buying centrally in wherever, Chelsea, Belgravia or St John's Wood is always pretty popular. It is a little bit of a status symbol. Do you think, based on your experience chatting to people in India, do you think that's true?
Yeah, I mean, going back to Tom's sort of question quickly, even myself as an ex-cricketer going through the airport, for example, you get looked at a lot. you sort of need your own security going through the airport.
People look at you though, Chris.
Yeah,
where you go, mate.
I know I'm a big.
That's also
I know
because
I'm a
you're
big guy,
massive.
but I mean,
Yeah,
I'm saying for
6'8".
but for the team in general, we need our own security. A lot of attention, gets driven when any sort of cricket team or sports team come into an airport. Those sort of situations. When I come here, go there with you two, no one really sort of I'll get recognised for being big, or I get looked at for being big, but there's not the same sort of hype. And as you're saying, I was on a plane with Sachin and Yuvraj and the Indian Legends team a few months ago, and Sachin literally has to come through a different way to the airport. Like, he's literally last on the plane. I can't imagine how he does that every single time or everywhere he goes. The hostesses, as soon as they see him, they get all nervous. They can't talk. They're spilling the drinks on the floor because it's Sachin. It's just, I can't imagine what it's like to sort of have that every sort of minute of your life. And again, Virat Kohli is in the same sort of ilk, and I've seen pictures are in the press in London now. He can sort of, looks like he's going about, I know he's getting papped a little bit, but he's going about sort of his day-to-day life in London, very normal. People probably don't recognise who he is with a hat on, unless you're an Indian cricket fan. You're not really going to blink an eye and really recognise who he is, but he can't walk out the door when he's in India. So, but yeah, having spent time with Indian players, a good friend of mine, Paddy Farhat, was physio of the India cricket team a few years ago, and I spent some time, I think it was 2018, spent some time with some of those players around some of the bars out in London, and they can just sort of go about their business without getting sort of bothered too much, really. And I know that they really enjoy it, and and we've had conversations with them about helping them find second properties, and and have thoughts about coming here after they retire and things like that. So I think the UK is a place that they feel safe, and there are a lot of similarities to the cultures in India, the restaurants and the places they can go in London, and they feel safe, and they feel culturally sort of in line with it. Wherever you are in the world, especially India, Pakistan, I think London, Big Ben, Westminster, all the sort of symbols goes a long way in India. And I think there is just that connection. You feel that connection when you're in India, that most Indians know about London. They know about the football teams, Manchester United, Chelsea, their sports channels. They have 30 sports channels, and it's football, it's cricket. They're playing old England highlights. They're playing old Manchester United for highlights. There's such a sort of attachment to the UK. And like I said, if you're lucky enough to be in that sort of wealth category of being able to afford something in the UK and have something in London, I think that goes a long way. And as we know, Indians, they are a lot about status, and they like to buy nice things when they are in that sort of category. And I think, like I said, owning something in London, looking over a cricket ground or a football ground, those sort of things, I think it goes a long way with their own sort of social groups.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the Indian clients that we work with, helping them buy property in the UK and in London. Buying a property in London is part of what success looks like for them. They get to a certain, the sort of pattern that we see is they're building their wealth in India, and there's loads of wealth being generated in India at the moment. They're building their wealth in India. They'll typically buy something in Dubai. They'll buy an asset in Dubai, and that'll be their first step into something outside of India. And then it seems to be like London's the next one, along, and that for them is, I think, part of what success in their mind looks like. And I guess it's like, well, why is that? And you've touched on a lot of that, but just look at the summer we've just had. When the sun comes out in London, you've got Wimbledon on, you've got the Test series, England versus India, you've got almost every celebrity around the world felt like they were here this summer. Obviously Virat Kohli was here this summer, and Rohit Sharma, he spent time here, obviously from an India cricket point of view. UK gets a lot of bad press more recently, and you see that. We travel to India a lot. You kind of read the local papers, and you see what gets talked about. I think a lot of it is slightly overblown, to be honest. Obviously, Ollie, you live in central London. You've firsthand kind of what it feels like to walk the streets of London and live here.
I think it's pretty crazy. I mean, it's classic media, isn't it? Which is blown up these days with social media and headlines. And you even hear it when you speak to someone. They will actually regurgitate a headline that you will have seen in a newspaper. And when we traveled to India, people were saying, oh, is it okay in London at the moment? Is it safe? And it's like any capital city around the world. There are nice places, and there are places that are not so nice. It's certainly not as bad as the press is making out. But again, it's also one of those things where people like to jump on the bandwagon and people like to talk about negative things. They're almost like conversation starters.
Yeah.
But the reality is people are still buying UK property. It will always be a mature, resilient market where people feel safe parking their money there. That just isn't going to change. And we see that reflected in UK buyers who are still buying UK property, overseas buyers, obviously particularly India. I think the thing that's really interesting about Indian buyers right now is when we chat to people over there, they always ask, I've been asked in a particular development, have any other Indians bought in this development? It kind of rubber stamps it if people in their own community are also buying property here. We get asked, don't we, who else has bought? Where people like to actually, on their own purchases, they kind of want to keep their cards close to their chest and don't necessarily always want to talk about it, but they still want to know everyone else who's buying. I think that is something that we've noticed in India, but fact of the matter is, I think the UK property market is always going to be attractive for all of the reasons that we've talked about. It's a trophy asset and it is a bit of a status symbol.
And it's also, we talk about India, but that's because it is such a big growth market. Now Indians now are the biggest buyers of London real estate this year, of any nationality globally. And that wasn't the case. That now is the case now. And obviously that just shows the level of demand there is from Indian buyers who are looking at the UK and London for various reasons.
And it's increasing, which is interesting. Like the market share of Indians buying property in the UK at the moment, that is increasing. And then when you think about the fact, it's not, let's be real, it's not getting any easier for overseas buyers to buy property in the UK. Actually, we've got a government at the moment that's making it quite challenging. It is actually a little bit more expensive. We have stamp duty that isn't cheap. But I think that really shows the strength of the UK market. I've seen various people on social media platforms, even like LinkedIn. I saw, a post the other day of someone moaning about buying property in the UK. Wealthy guy, he still bought it.
Yeah, of course.
You can talk about it and get all negative about it, but the UK market, for the reasons we've talked about and many other reasons, is always going to be attractive.
Yeah, and go back to what you said, Tom. It's guys can have their investments in India. Again, Indians investing in India and their own, whether it's funds and things like that, they can get good returns. Like I said, they can park some money in Dubai. It might be a better return right now than the UK. But ultimately, it's the guys that can afford it and they want to invest in the UK. They want to have that trophy asset. And if it is a little bit more difficult to get it through the system, they will still buy because they want a piece of London. They understand long term, like it's not going anywhere.
I think also like the prime central London at the moment it's a really interesting time because you've got this uptick of interest from Indian buyers, and you've also at the same time got an uptick in interest from US buyers. Speaking to Barclay, one of the big PLC developers here in the UK, one of the biggest house builders, they've instantly seen an uptick in US buyers buying into the UK, of people sort of planning around, political, scenarios and kind of de-risking their own investment portfolios. So prime central London itself is really underpinned. It's really an international market underpinned by wealthy people all around the world who are looking at it as a piece of their overall wealth. I think the other thing to add to that is the rupee on the pound has softened over the last 5 years. Indian buyers now are buying at about a 10% discount to what they were buying previously. And that's also sort of factoring into why Indian buyers are making the decision to purchase right now.
Yeah. And I mean, we've spoken about it in other videos that we can link here, but the education piece, universities that are well renowned, UCL, King's, LSE, Imperial, these are universities that everyone knows around the world and parents want to send their son or daughter to. I think there's plenty of reasons that we can chat about. And I think if you're a buyer or a potential buyer based in India and you're really interested to understand who's buying and why they're buying UK property, and of course, what is the best way of going about it, then there'll be a link below in the description. Click the link below and a member of our team will be happy to take you through the details. Thanks very much.